Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this week's webinar at Let's Get Real About Real Estate. And I chose kind of a hot topic, at least at a local level, and I'm sure that on a national level, this is coming up as well. And the real estate topic you may or may not be familiar with is the topic of subject to mortgages. And this was actually on our local news channel this week. There was a couple that got really burned by this model, and there's a couple of reasons why that probably happened, and I'm sure that there are many, many others. There's a lot of foreclosures happening and other things like that because of this model. So just let me explain what a subject to mortgage is. So person A goes to a lender and gets a mortgage to purchase a home. And in that contract, in that mortgage, there is something called a due on sale clause. And that clause says you cannot transfer this property to another buyer without paying off this existing loan that's in place. And that is based on person A's credit and everything else that a lender uses to determine that someone is worthy of receiving a loan. Person A gets behind on their mortgage, something happens, maybe they get injured, they lose their job, whatever it may be, and they start to get behind on their mortgage payments. And usually this is where this starts. Or the house needs a lot of repairs they can't afford, whatever it may be. And someone comes along, and it's usually a wholesaler. They are not the most credible people most of the time, and they don't understand the laws and the risks and the liabilities, because for them there is no liability. And I'll explain that further in a minute. But they contact this homeowner because the homeowner is on a list of properties that are in default or pre-foreclosure. And they call person A, and they come and they sit down with them and they say, hey, I'll take over your loan and I'll pay it off for the rest of the life of the loan. I just need you to leave the mortgage in your name. And they'll give them a gamut of reasons. Either, oh, I can't put something else on my credit right now, or whatever their reasoning is. And they usually pitch this as an advantage to the actual person that currently has the mortgage. And the way they pitch it is, I'll make your payments. It stays in your name. It's going to build your credit. It's going to make your credit better, and it's going to put you in a better position. And a lot of times these people are very desperate. They don't want to go to foreclosure and end up, displaced without the ability to get another home or whatever it may be. And so they say, okay, and they sign it over. And there are legitimate ways for this to be done, and it's done through an attorney, and there's a contract drawn up between the two parties, A and B. A, the person that owns the current mortgage, and B, the person who is taking it subject to the existing mortgage. And both of those people need to be fully aware of a very, very concerning aspect, which is that deed needs to be transferred to the new owner's name immediately, not held in escrow for 6 or 12 months or any other nonsense like that. It needs to be immediately transferred. When that happens, it will often trigger the lender to call the loan due on sale, because the lender sees that the deed was transferred, meaning the house was sold without the existing mortgage being satisfied. And so the lender can call it due on sale. Will they always? No. Is it pretty fair practice that they don't catch it? Yes, and that's exactly why this continues to happen. However, that is by far not the only risk to either party. Second risk is the actual person who owns that property and has that mortgage, person A, has a homeowner insurance policy on that property. Liability insurance, replacement, all of that kind of stuff. The person that takes the property subject to, at a minimum, has to add themselves as a named insured on person A's homeowner's insurance policy Otherwise, if something happens on the property or to the property while it's occupied by person B or whoever person B rents the property to, or anybody other than person A, there's a good chance that that insurance claim won't be paid. And person A ultimately is the one still liable and responsible for everything to do with that policy, everything to do with that property. Number two, if you are person A in this situation and you signed for that mortgage, you took that loan in good faith with that lender, understanding that you cannot transfer a property without paying the loan off unless you have an assumable mortgage and the person goes through the proper processes with the lender to assume the mortgage. Otherwise, you're committing fraud as the person who signed for that mortgage. If something happens to that property that detrimentally affects its value and your insurance won't pay the claim because maybe they find out that you weren't living in it or that you transferred the deed and so now your insurance policy is no longer effective, you're liable and the bank can come back and will come back on you. And this is going, this could involve a lot of very, very ugly repercussions. Another risk, of course, to person B, assuming that they're not a wholesaler, just assigning this over to somebody else, but they're the actual person taking over the payment. So if you're person B in this scenario, and you get lucky and the bank does not call this due on sale, and you go ahead and add yourself as a named insured, but you don't want to transfer the deed right away because you're afraid that the bank might call it due on sale, and maybe right now you're not in a position to get a bank loan and to purchase it the conventional way. So you ask the attorney, whoever else is involved, to just hold the deed in escrow for 6 months or 12 months to give you a little bit of time in case the bank does catch it and call it due on sale. Well, guess what? In the meantime, person A, who's already in financial trouble, which is why they needed you to come and take over their mortgage payments to begin with, who knows how much other debt that they have that they're in trouble over? Could they owe the IRS tens of thousands of dollars? Oh, yes, they could. Because if they can't pay their mortgage, maybe they can't pay their taxes either. There are other types of judgments. They could have had some work done on the house and not paid the contractor, and the contractor can put a mechanics lien. There are a million scenarios here where liens could be placed against that property because some liens do survive a homestead and others do not. So there are liens that could be placed against that property after you've taken over the payments, and now you go to refinance that person A out of it in 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, or you do some improvements and put the property on the market because you're going to flip it and make a profit, and oops, there's a $25,000 judgment against that property. These are just a few of the risks involved, and it's a very, very dangerous territory to get into. If you are approached by someone offering this to you, I would say run and say no. And especially do not ever agree to something like this that allows the contract to be assigned to another buyer. If you'd like to talk about this further, or if you've run into this type of situation and you'd like to pick my brain a little bit or talk a little bit more, get a little more information, feel free to reach out to me. You can call me or email me at any time. My contact information will be at the end of this webinar. I sure hope this was helpful to everybody, and thank you so much for tuning in to Let's Get Real about real estate.